All right, here we are on our last article dealing with the three branches of government. In this one, we're dealing with the judicial branch, the one that judges. What are the other two? Right, we did the legislature. Ooh, that was really bad. And the executive. So the legislatures, which is the House and the Senate, the executive, which is the president, those ones are the other branches. So this is the last one. The judicial power, which judges. These are the judges. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, we have the Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts, that means smaller courts, as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. So there is a whole set of courts. There's district courts that you've probably heard of that lead up to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is not the only federal court. There are smaller courts that lead to it. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior court, shall hold their offices during good behavior. So how long? As long as they're being good. Good behavior. In other words, judges don't ever end their term until they decide that most of them just decide they want to retire. So they can keep it as long as they'd like. And shall at stated times receive for their services compensation which shall not be diminished. So they get paid and their payment can't go down during the continuance of their office. Notice they can get raises. I guess they left that in there because these judges can serve a long time. They can serve their whole life, but their payment can't go down, but they can get raises. This part right here you can see is modified by the 11th Amendment. We're going to skip it for right now, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the 11th Amendment. It's a little bit technical about what type of things that the court takes on. But let's read through some of this other stuff here. In all cases affecting ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. So if there's ambassadors involved, ministers, consuls, or if a state is suing another state, or if the state's suing the federal government, if the state's involved, or if a state is being sued, then the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. It's the one that decides. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, which means it goes to the smaller courts first. The smaller courts take care of it first, and then if they need to appeal, they can appeal to the Supreme Court. Both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as Congress shall make. So Congress can pass laws to change it, if they'd like. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment. Remember how is impeachment done? Remember that happens in the legislature. We've talked about that before. But all other crimes shall be by jury. So in other words, if you commit a crime, you don't go to the Supreme Court and judges decide. You actually get a jury that decides for you if you're innocent or guilty. That's why if somebody's accused of a crime, they have a jury that decides. But if there's not a crime involved and they're just trying to decide, they're trying to work out an argument or if something's constitutional or not, then it goes to the Supreme Court. But if it's a crime, it goes to a jury trial. And such trials shall be held in the state where the said crimes have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place as Congress shall direct by law. So this right here does, this part of the Constitution does ensure Americans the right to a trial by jury. There's not going to be judges or politicians or business, or there are people that are going to decide whether you're innocent or guilty. This is going to be decided by a jury of your peers, and it says so in the Constitution. It's one of your constitutional rights. Last little thing here, they define in the judicial section what treason is. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. That's where you've heard that phrase, giving aid and comfort to your enemies. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act or confession in open court. So treason means that you're betraying your government and you're becoming an enemy of your government, which treason, that's pretty high crime. And here's where it decides. If you actually fight against the United States, then you are in treason. Or if you help out your enemies. So if you give them money, or if you give them weapons, or if you give them a place to stay, or you help out the enemies, then you are considered to be guilty of treason in the United States. And you need two witnesses to prove that. Congress shall have power to declare punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason. Attainder is like your sentence, what your penalty is. But no penalty but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood. That's an interesting phrase. What the heck does that mean? We'll talk about it in a second. Or forfeiture, again, except during the life of the person attainted. Corruption of blood means that you take away all the property from your family so that your family can't inherit it, or that all the things that belong to your family. So in other words, in here, they want to make sure, and forfeiture is the same thing, that you give up the things that you have. They want to make sure that you punish only the person, not the family. So punish not family. That's a weird way to put that, but hey, that's what I wrote. So they want to make sure that if somebody is guilty of treason, you don't punish their whole family for it. You only punish the person who did it. So they can put him in prison. You can be put to death for treason, but you cannot take property away from their family. So that's the trial. That's the section on the judicial power. Remember, how do judges become on the judges? Or what did I just say? How do judges become Supreme Court judges? That was in the last one we talked about. The president recommends them, and the Senate approves them, and then they become a Supreme Court judge. So the section here on the judicial powers is pretty small. It doesn't really tell them a lot of what they're supposed to do other than judge. That's it. So you'll see the Supreme Court does lots of things that we're not quite sure if it should, but the Constitution itself doesn't give us a lot of guidance. Some people complain that the Supreme Court does too much, that they decide too many things. Some people say that the Supreme Court actually changes laws, but they don't really have the power to change laws. That's Congress's job. But they can tell Congress that they have to change a law because that's their judgment. And so this whole judicial branch, there really is some big questions on exactly what is okay for them to do and what not, because it's kind of vague. But they do judge the things that are happening in the United States, and can control whether things are okay with the Constitution or not. So there's the judicial power. 3 branches of government. Hopefully you got some good notes. You're going to take a quiz, do some writing stuff. In the next packet, we're going to finish out the Constitution.